It was a Tuesday morning, the sun barely peeking through the blinds of my office, when I got the email. Emma, my boss, had summoned me to her office at 9 a.m. The heart-sinking sensation hit me instantly, and I tried to shake off the ominous feeling gnawing at the pit of my stomach. After all, I had been a loyal and hard-working employee for Greenwood Marketing for 6 years. The blood, sweat, and countless hours I'd poured into the company should have meant something, but apparently they didn't. As I sat across from Emma, her perfectly manicured nails tapping rhythmically on the desk, my mind raced. "This is disloyal," Emma's voice was ice-cold, piercing the tension in the air. I had been expecting a chat, maybe about a new project or a minor issue, but this felt like the beginning of something much worse. I had never felt so small, so exposed in that moment. I clutched my purse tightly to stop my hands from trembling. Emma continued with an icy stare. "I have confirmation that you interviewed with Pinnacle Solutions last week." She slid a printed email across the desk, as if it was some sort of undeniable evidence of a crime I had committed. "You took a half-day off for a dental appointment, and I see you were actually meeting with them during that time." I froze, realizing what was happening. I was being accused of disloyalty for simply exploring career opportunities elsewhere. The injustice hit like a slap in the face. I had worked my way up from a mere assistant in this company, and now, 6 years later, I was being dismissed without so much as a second thought. I'd tripled my client portfolio, brought in millions of dollars in revenue, and had earned the respect of key players in our industry. But apparently, that meant nothing to Emma. As her words washed over me, I realized how hollow all of it had been. She had shut down every request I'd made for a raise over the past 3 years, 3 years of relentless dedication, accompanied by empty promises of a better future. The first time I asked for a raise, I was met with a rehearsed excuse. "We're on a tight budget this year." I let it slide, believing in the company's long-term goals. The second time, it was more of the same, only with a hint of optimism. "Next year, things will be better, just a bit longer." But after the third rejection, it was clear that my dedication wasn't going to be rewarded, no matter how hard I worked. I took a deep breath, my fingers curling into fists. When Emma finished her tirade, I stood up slowly, straightened my jacket, and walked around her desk. "I wish you and Greenwood continued success," I said calmly, knowing that I was leaving with dignity intact. There was no outburst, no tears, just the quiet realization that this was the best thing that could have happened to me. As I packed my personal items into a box, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and when I glanced at the screen, I saw the name David Turner, CEO of Pinnacle Solutions. "Can we move our final discussion to today at 2 p.m.? I smiled. Emma thought she had beaten me, but what she didn't know was that I was already on my way to something better. The drive home from Greenwood Marketing felt surreal, as if I were floating above my own life, watching it unravel in slow motion. The box of my belongings sat in the passenger seat, framed photos of my family, my favorite mug, and the small potted plant I had faithfully watered every Monday morning for 6 years. How could so many years of work, late nights, and early mornings be condensed into a single cardboard box? I remembered when I first joined Greenwood fresh out of graduate school, my marketing degree from Washington State still hot off the press. I had been eager, idealistic, and willing to do anything to prove myself. Back then, I was just another face in a sea of entry-level hires, running coffee errands and taking notes in meetings. But I worked harder than anyone else. I volunteered for the toughest projects and made a name for myself among the clients others called impossible. Within 2 years, I had climbed to managing our mid-tier accounts, a level most people took twice as long to reach. By my 4th year, I was assigned to lead the Pinnacle Solutions account, our biggest, and one that represented nearly a third of Greenwood's annual revenue. I was terrified at first, but determined to succeed. When the previous account manager failed to meet Pinnacle's expectations, I stepped in, turned the relationship around, and even helped Pinnacle double their marketing budget with us. That single achievement brought in millions to Greenwood, and, for a brief moment, it felt like my efforts were finally recognized. I still remember David Turner, Pinnacle's CEO, telling me with a grin, "You're the only person who understands what we need before we even ask." From that day on, I became his go-to contact. Whenever issues arose, he called me directly. Greenwood thrived from this partnership. And Emma loved to boast about our success in board meetings. Yet every time I walked into her office to request a raise, the doors slammed shut. The first time I asked was right after Pinnacle renewed their contract at a record value. I present clear performance metrics and salary comparisons, showing I was underpaid compared to market rates. Emma's expression was sympathetic but firm. "It's just not in the budget this year, but your contributions are noted." I left disappointed but hopeful, thinking the next year would be different. The second time, I had even more reasons to be optimistic. I'd brought in 3 major new clients and won an industry award for a campaign I designed. Surely this time, I thought, my value couldn't be ignored. Yet Emma delivered the same well-practiced excuse. "Next year will be better. We just have to tighten our belts a little longer." Meanwhile, she showed up to work in a brand new luxury SUV and announced company expansion plans at quarterly meetings. It was the third rejection that finally broke something inside me. Just 6 months ago, after I negotiated a 40% increase in Pinnacle's contract, I walked into Emma's office one last time, heart pounding with hope. She told me my performance was exceptional, but Greenwood was investing in infrastructure, so a raise wasn't possible again. That night, for the first time in 6 years, I updated my resume. Not out of anger, but because I realized the truth. I was worth more than unfulfilled promises. I was done waiting for respect and compensation that might never come. I remember sitting at my kitchen counter that night, staring at the blinking cursor on my freshly updated resume. Each word I typed felt like a small act of defiance, a quiet declaration that I would no longer wait for recognition that would never come. It wasn't anger that guided my fingers across the keyboard, it was self-respect. I realized I had sacrificed enough of myself for a company that saw me only as a resource, not a person. But I never expected my quiet search for something better to explode so spectacularly in my face. The morning after I submitted my resume to a handful of companies, I felt a surge of hope. It was the first time in years that I felt in control of my own future. Yet, as the weeks passed, the burden of secrecy weighed heavily on me. Each time Emma walked by my desk, I wondered if she knew. Each meeting with clients felt like a tightrope walk, balancing the loyalty I felt toward them against the gnawing knowledge that I needed to move on for my own sake. Then came that Tuesday morning, the day Emma summoned me to her office and laid bare what she had discovered. The shock of being exposed was almost physical, like a punch to the gut. My mind flashed back to every late night spent drafting proposals, every weekend sacrificed to meet impossible deadlines, and every time I swallowed my frustration with a smile. I realized how foolish I had been to think those sacrifices would protect me when the company decided I was no longer useful. I had always imagined that when I left Greenwood, it would be on my own terms. I pictured giving a polished 2-week notice, offering a professional handover, and saying heartfelt goodbyes to my clients and colleagues. Instead, I was being marched out of the building like a criminal, as if daring to value myself was a betrayal of the highest order. It was humiliating, and the sting of it clung to me like smoke long after I stepped into the warm spring sunlight outside Greenwood's glass doors. Yet, as I carried the box of my belongings to my car, something shifted inside me. The anger began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. Emma thought she had stripped me of everything by firing me so abruptly, but the truth was she had done me a favor. I no longer had to pretend that loyalty to Greenwood would ever pay off. I was free to find a place that would see my worth and reward it. That realization grew stronger when I checked my phone and saw a new message from David Turner, the CEO of Pinnacle Solutions. He wanted to move our final conversation to that very afternoon. I almost laughed. The timing so perfect, it felt like the universe itself was conspiring to push me forward. Emma believed she was punishing me, but she had unknowingly cleared the path for me to step into something far greater. As I drove away from Greenwood's parking lot for the last time, I glanced at the cardboard box beside me. It held the remnants of 6 years of my life, proof of everything I had given and everything I was ready to leave behind. For the first time in months, the knot in my stomach began to loosen. I wasn't just leaving a job. I was leaving behind the fear of being undervalued. I was finally ready to fight for the future I deserved. When I pulled into my apartment complex that afternoon, the realization that I was unemployed finally hit me with the force of a tidal wave. The box in my trunk seemed to radiate the weight of everything I'd left behind. My mind kept replaying Emma's cold words, the sterile office, the hush that fell over my colleagues as I packed up my desk. For a brief moment, the fear threatened to drown me. What if this was a mistake? What if no one else wanted me? What if I had thrown everything away? But then my phone rang. I looked down and saw David Turner's name. My pulse quickened. "Addison, I just heard what happened," he said without preamble when I answered. His voice was calm, almost reassuring, like a rope thrown to someone stranded at sea. "Are you available to come in today? I'd like to accelerate our conversation." Hope bloomed so quickly it made my breath catch. "Yes, I can be there at 2 p.m., I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "Excellent, and Addison, don't worry about what happened this morning. Sometimes these things work out for the best." When I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman looking back wasn't the same person who had sat trembling in Emma's office just hours before. She looked determined, resolute, almost fierce. I showered and pulled on my best suit, the one I used to wear to pitch new clients, and applied my makeup with hands that no longer shook. Emma thought she'd ended my career. Instead, she'd given me the push I needed to find my freedom. I arrived at Pinnacle Solutions headquarters 20 minutes early. The building gleamed under the afternoon sun, its modern glass facade reflecting a city alive with possibilities. Unlike Greenwood's dated beige cubicles, Pinnacle's lobby was bright, welcoming, buzzing with quiet energy. As I stepped out of the elevator on the 30th floor, I was surprised to find David himself waiting for me. His warm smile felt like the first truly genuine gesture I'd experienced in weeks. "Addison, thank you for coming on such short notice," he greeted, extending his hand. His grip was firm, his eyes kind, yet sharp with the keen assessment of a leader who knew exactly what he wanted. "Let's talk in my office." We walked through open workspaces filled with collaborative pods and glass-walled meeting rooms. Employees looked up and waved people I had worked with on campaigns, many of whom greeted me like an old friend. The contrast with Greenwood's stiff atmosphere was striking. Pinnacle's office felt alive, purposeful, a place where creativity wasn't just encouraged but expected. David's office was modest compared to Emma's imposing corner suite, but it was infinitely warmer. Soft seating, personal photos, and floor-to-ceiling windows gave it an air of openness and trust. After offering me coffee, he got straight to the point. "After what happened today," he said, his voice low but certain, "there's no reason to wait. Addison, I know the value you bring, not just to Pinnacle, but to any organization smart enough to have you. I want you here." He pulled a folder from his desk and slid it across to me. Inside was a job offer, Director of Client Strategy. I scanned the details, my heart racing as my eyes landed on the salary figure nearly double what Greenwood ever paid me, more than I had dared to request. My hands trembled for a different reason now. "This is generous," I managed, looking up at David. "It's what someone with your track record and proven results deserves," he corrected gently. "Sometimes you need to leave a situation to understand your true worth." In that moment, the last remnants of fear slipped away. I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. A week later, the shock of everything that had happened began to settle into something more profound relief. The weight of my final days at Greenwood Marketing had felt suffocating, but as the days passed, I found myself breathing a little easier. I was no longer tethered to a place that had never truly appreciated me, and I was preparing for a fresh start at Pinnacle Solutions, a company that saw my value right from the start. It was a Thursday afternoon when I received a call that I never expected. The number on my phone was unfamiliar, but something in my gut told me I should answer. "Addison Walker?" a smooth voice asked on the other end. "This is Elaine Winters. I'm on the board at Greenwood Marketing." My stomach tightened at the sound of her name. Elaine was the last person I expected to hear from, especially after everything that had happened. I had assumed that my time at Greenwood was officially overdone, finished. But here she was, calling me out of the blue. "I understand there was an incident today regarding your employment," Elaine continued, her tone measured but far from cold. "Victoria may have been hasty in her decision. The board would like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss it." I blinked, unsure how to respond. Part of me felt a sense of curiosity. What was this really about? Had Emma realized her mistake and sent someone to try and fix things? But another part of me, the one that had spent years silently watching my efforts be overlooked, wanted to laugh at the irony of it all. I took a moment before replying. "I appreciate the call, Elaine," I said, keeping my voice professional. but I've already accepted another position elsewhere. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the surprise on her end of the line. May I ask where? She pressed, a bit too eagerly. I kept my tone firm. I don't think it's appropriate to share that right now. Elaine didn't let the silence drag on for too long. If this is about compensation, we're prepared to revisit those conversations. The board values your contributions to Greenwood marketing. I couldn't suppress a bitter chuckle. After 3 years of being repeatedly told no for a raise, suddenly the board valued my contributions? The offer was generous, but it came 3 years too late. It's not just about compensation, I replied, my voice steady. It's about respect. Respect for my time, my work, and my loyalty. I gave Greenwood everything, but I was never given anything in return. Now I'm moving on. Elaine hesitated for a moment, and I could sense the wheels turning on the other end. Perhaps we should meet in person, she suggested, though her tone was tinged with reluctance. Could you come by tomorrow morning? I agreed, but with a clear stipulation. I've signed an employment contract elsewhere, Elaine. I'm not coming back to negotiate. I'm here to provide closure. She accepted this, and the line went dead. The next morning, I walked into Greenwood Marketing's glass-walled lobby for the first time as a visitor. The feeling was strange, as if I were standing in a parallel version of my former life. Jessica, the receptionist, greeted me with a surprised look. Addison, you're here for the meeting with Ms. Winters? She asked, her voice a bit too cheerful, given the circumstances. That's right, I replied, signing the visitor log, feeling the oddness of the situation. When I was ushered into the conference room, Elaine was waiting for me. She was older than I had expected, with silver hair and a sharp, confident presence. She gestured for me to sit and immediately got down to business. I've reviewed your personnel file, she began, flipping open a folder. 6 years of excellent performance reviews, consistent growth, and 3 requests for salary adjustment, all denied. She looked up at me, an expression of surprise on her face. I wasn't aware of this pattern, I nodded, feeling no need to sugarcoat things now. The compensation decisions were never reviewed at the board level. And frankly, I wasn't considered for any promotions or salary increases for 3 years, despite meeting every goal and bringing in millions in revenue. That's why I'm here today, not to renegotiate, but to explain why I'm leaving. Elaine was silent for a moment, taking in my words. Her next question was unexpected, but I welcomed it. What could Greenwood Marketing have done differently to retain you? I didn't hesitate. Loyalty works both ways, I said simply. I was expected to be loyal while the company repeatedly failed to invest in me. It creates an imbalance that isn't sustainable. Elaine nodded thoughtfully. Fair enough, she said, standing up to shake my hand. Thank you for your candor. Whatever your next steps are, I wish you success. As I walked out of Greenwood Marketing for the second and final time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Closure. I wasn't just leaving a job, I was leaving behind the chains of my past and walking into a future where I could finally thrive. The conversation with Elaine hadn't been about giving me a second chance, it had been about giving me a chance to reclaim my narrative. Tomorrow, I would begin my new job at Pinnacle Solutions, and for the first time, I would be working for a company that saw my worth from the start. Monday arrived faster than I expected. It felt surreal to be sitting in my new office at Pinnacle Solutions, the reality of it all still sinking in. The walls were clean, sleek, and modern, unlike the outdated cubicle I had left behind at Greenwood Marketing. My new office had a door, windows, and a view of the city skyline. More importantly, it had a sense of possibility. The buzz of excitement that I had felt during the interview only grew stronger now that I was officially a part of the team. I could feel the fresh energy surrounding me, the air thick with opportunity. I had arrived early, eager to settle in and establish my space. The desk was already stocked with essentials, a computer, a phone, pens, and a welcome basket, all arranged thoughtfully. This was a world where the details mattered, and it made all the difference. I felt like I was finally in a place that respected my contributions before I had even started. At 9:00 a.m., David Turner, the CEO, stopped by to check in. His presence was warm but assertive, his reputation as a leader well-earned. He had always been the kind of person who recognized hard work and knew how to empower his team. Addison, he greeted me with a firm handshake. I'm glad to see you settling in. Today's the day we begin some exciting work together." His tone was filled with genuine enthusiasm. "We have a lot to do, but I have no doubt you're the right person for the job." I smiled, feeling a swell of pride. After everything I had endured at Greenwood, this was a fresh start in a place where my worth was understood. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just another employee, I was a key player, someone whose input mattered. David led me into a conference room, where a handful of my new colleagues were already waiting. They were part of the marketing team, each with their own impressive background and experience. We began to discuss the immediate projects, starting with a major campaign launch. I was eager to dive into the work, but also to get to know the people who would be my partners in this new chapter. As we sat down to strategize, I couldn't help but reflect on my time at Greenwood. It was hard not to compare the environment, the stale air of corporate indifference at my old job, to the vibrant, open atmosphere here at Pinnacle. I realized that while I had given Greenwood my loyalty and dedication, I had never received the same in return. This new beginning wasn't just about the work. It was about valuing myself enough to walk away from a place that had never truly appreciated me. The morning flew by in a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and introductions to key clients. By the time lunch rolled around, I already felt like a part of the team, like I was finally contributing to something that mattered. As I walked to the cafeteria with a few new colleagues, I couldn't help but smile to myself. This wasn't just a job. It was the beginning of something bigger. Back at my desk after lunch, I received a text from Thomas, a former colleague from Greenwood. I hadn't spoken to him much since I left, but it seemed that news of my departure had spread like wildfire. "Are you really done with Greenwood?" he asked. "Everyone's talking about it. Victoria's been in emergency meetings all day." "I heard she's freaking out." I chuckled, but there was no satisfaction in it, no joy in the chaos at my old company. I had moved on, and so had my focus. I quickly typed a reply. "I'm done with the drama, Thomas. It's time for me to focus on the future." I hit send and put my phone back in my desk drawer, leaving behind the noise of Greenwood and the gossip that would follow me for weeks to come. The decision was made, and there was no looking back. What mattered now was that I was here at Pinnacle Solutions, where my future was in my hands, not dictated by anyone else's narrow view of my worth. The phone call that would have come a few months ago, when Victoria or Elaine might have tried to salvage the relationship, never came. And I wasn't disappointed. I had moved past that. I no longer needed their validation. I had my own. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself thinking about how far I had come, how much I had grown, and how much potential lay ahead. I was no longer waiting for someone to see my worth. I had found a company that did, and that made all the difference. The first week at Pinnacle Solutions felt like stepping into a new world, one that was brighter, faster, and filled with possibilities I hadn't dared to imagine back at Greenwood Marketing. Every day brought challenges that inspired me instead of exhausting me. Every meeting felt purposeful, and every interaction with my team reminded me why I had chosen to walk away from my old job, because I deserved to be somewhere I was valued. By Friday morning, I had already settled into my routine. My team was clicking together like a well-oiled machine, and we were moving forward with the first big client campaign of the quarter. The energy was contagious. Each brainstorming session buzzed with ideas, and I finally felt like I was exactly where I belonged. That afternoon, David Turner invited me into the executive conference room. The mood was serious, but the undertone was one of excitement. Around the table sat Pinnacle's leadership team, including the CFO and CMO, all gathered to discuss something crucial: the future of their contract with Greenwood Marketing. "Our contract with Greenwood is up for renewal next month," David began, folding his hands on the polished wooden table. "Given recent changes, we're reevaluating whether they're still the right partner for us." A wave of emotions hit me, part disbelief, part grim satisfaction. After years of pouring myself into Greenwood's success only to be discarded, I now found myself sitting on the other side of the table. I could influence the future of the biggest client Greenwood had left. The CFO turned to me. "Addison, we'd like your perspective. You know Greenwood's strengths and weaknesses better than anyone else." A part of me wanted to say what everyone probably expected, to push them to cut ties with Greenwood immediately. It would have been the ultimate revenge, a swift and satisfying blow to the company that had undervalued me. But the more I considered it, the clearer it became. Revenge was not who I wanted to be. I had moved on, and I wanted my decisions to reflect the professional I had become. I took a steadying breath before speaking. I think we should evaluate Greenwood like we would any other agency, I said carefully. Their creative work is good, but the inconsistency in account management and the recent internal turmoil are real concerns. Our priority should be ensuring our needs are met consistently, regardless of the partner. The room fell quiet for a moment before David nodded approvingly. That's fair. We'll request proposals from Greenwood and 2 other agencies. We'll make a decision based on merit, not emotion. By midweek, the proposals had been reviewed, and the executive team reached their decision. Pinnacle Solutions would be transitioning their account to Meridian Creative, a fresh, dynamic agency that better aligned with Pinnacle's evolving strategy. David gave me the courtesy of reading the final email before it was sent to Greenwood. The message was professional and direct. Effective immediately, the account would move to Meridian. As I read the words, I pictured Victoria Sanders, the woman who once thought firing me would be the end of my career. Reading the same email, I imagined the shock, the panic, the slow realization of what she had lost. But instead of feeling glee, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. I hadn't needed to sabotage Greenwood or badmouth anyone. Their own failures had done that. I hadn't burned any bridges. I had simply crossed them and kept moving forward. Later that afternoon, a message came in from Jessica, Greenwood's receptionist. You won't believe it. Victoria's been in meetings all day. Everyone's saying they're losing Pinnacle. The office is chaos. I read her message, took a deep breath, and smiled. There was no need to gloat or reply. I had chosen a better path. That evening, as the sun set over the city skyline outside my new office, I looked out the window, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. Leaving Greenwood had once felt like the end of everything I'd built. Now, I knew it was the beginning of something far greater. I hadn't just found a new job, I'd found my voice, my confidence, and the power to choose my own worth. Success, I realized, was the best kind of closure. As I stood by the window of my new office, watching the city lights begin to glow against the evening sky, I felt a deep, unshakable sense of peace. This journey, marked by sleepless nights, quiet doubts, and moments of fierce determination, had taught me something more valuable than any salary or title ever could. The importance of knowing your worth and never settling for less than you deserve. For so many years, I believed that if I just worked harder, stayed loyal, and kept proving myself, someone else would eventually see my value. But the painful truth was that not everyone will recognize your contributions, no matter how hard you try. Sometimes, the people you pour your heart into will only see you as replaceable. And sometimes, the very place you've given your all to will let you walk away without a second thought. But what I learned, what I hope each of you reading this will remember, is that the only validation that truly matters is your own. You are not defined by the approval or rejection of others. You define yourself by the choices you make when you realize you deserve more. Walking away from a place or a person that doesn't appreciate you isn't giving up. It's an act of courage. It's an act of self-respect. And it's often the first step toward the life you're meant to lead. If you find yourself stuck somewhere that drains your passion, stifles your growth, or makes you feel small, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself if you're staying out of fear, because life is too short to settle for less than what sets your soul on fire. The right place, the right people, and the right opportunities exist. But they only appear when you decide you're worth more than being undervalued. Looking back, I don't see my time at my old company as wasted. It shaped me, taught me resilience, and gave me the chance to prove to myself that I could rise even after falling. It showed me how strong I could be when everything I'd relied on disappeared overnight. And it taught me that sometimes life's biggest disappointments are the universe's way of pushing us where we truly belong. So to everyone who's ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or unappreciated, know this: your worth isn't up for debate. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to walk away to find your worth? Share your story in the comments below. I read everyone, and your experiences might inspire someone else who needs to hear them. And if you found value in this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next empowering story. Together, let's build a community that lifts each other up, celebrates courage, and reminds everyone that they are worthy of respect, recognition, and success. Because in the end, the greatest success isn't about proving your worth to others, it's about knowing your worth and never letting anyone make you doubt it again.